Good evening. The Nubian News presents an interview with Zachary Chester. Mr. Chester is seeking re-election to the West Ward Council. We are talking with him today so the voters of Trenton can have a better idea of the man. Welcome, Councilman. Many people in the West Ward complain that you're nowhere in sight and not proactive. What say you?
Well, I think many of the residents in the West Ward were not aware of the divorce that I went through. Going through the divorce and council presidency, which was a lot of responsibility, had me more focused on getting my personal life together. It's something that I did not make public. It happened. Went through it, came out on the other end, still standing, with the responsibility of managing council and working. So in moving forward in the upcoming council, because I believe that I am going to be successful, I am not seeking the council presidency. I'm going to focus on the ward. Actually, I'm in the process of reconnecting with the West Ward residents. I have several community meetings set up to sit down and reconnect with residents of the West Ward.
Where do you work?
I work for a healthcare provider, ASAP. So I provide behavioral health services.
And like you said, you're reconnecting with the West Ward. And how are you letting the West Ward people know that you're having these meetings?
Well, information will go out. I just got confirmation this morning. We're going to hold a meeting on May the 31st at Covenant's Church on the corner of Parkside and Parkway. And it's going to be at 6 o'clock, May 31st. Yesterday I attended the Abbott Building Civic Association meeting. And moving forward, figuring out how to capture constituents' contact information, whether it's cell number or email, to be able to email out information and text information out to residents. One of the challenges in doing that is, first getting the information and then being able to afford to send the information. So text message, for those residents that are willing to share their numbers, that's very low cost because with council we don't have stipend or we don't have funding to send out messages.
You don't?
No, we don't.
You don't have any way to contact your constituents? Any funding to do that?
No. Okay. And council would have to be willing to put funds into our budget, which we keep our budget at bare minimum, in order to do that. Right, where we have processes and procedures.
Right.
So those things are in place, and we have a clerk who is well versed.
Okay.
And I believe I shared this the last time that we are going to have a retreat, and that's before council is sworn in. Have that retreat so that council understands the do's and don'ts. We've never had that in the past. So I put those things in place with the clerk, whether I'm there or not. He did the research. There's no law that prohibits council members elect from coming together and having a retreat. Because when we first came on board and we came together, there was a whole lot of, he did the research, and we can have that meeting, and we will, just so that council members, especially for the new council members, are aware of what they can do and what they can't do and how they should conduct themselves.
So you think that along with the city clerk, the new council is in good enough shape where you don't have to say, hey, look, maybe I better run for president again?
No, I don't think so, because I plan to be there. Mm-hmm. And I still have a voice, mm-hmm. as a councilman. I believe as a councilman with experience, I can have those conversations before we get up on the dais, because what I have learned is whether you're right or wrong, constituents don't want to see you up there fussing back and forth with each other. They don't want to see that. I've learned that. conversations offline.
Okay, we're going to have a new mayor. We're going to have a lot of new council people. So I believe that experience is very important.
Well, I totally agree with you. I mean, for the things that have been worked on here in the West Ward, I know what those things are. I've sat down with the owner at the old Capitol Health Medical campus, the Mercer campus, the project that's going on in Calwater Park with the playground. The playground was just installed. There's some other things that's going to go on there as well. Other things that are going on in the ward over at the Pennington Shopping Center. There was some things that were going on there with the owners of that property. I believe before the end of my term that will be resolved. But if not, having that experience to be able to share with the incoming mayor, what those concerns are, how important that shopping center is to that area of the West Ward. We also have public service land pipes in the West Ward. Many of our streets, they have to come back and they have to pave those and put the permanent patch there. So we've had a number of things that are going on in the West Ward that would need experience, to help the new administration know the direction that things should be going in here in the West Ward.
So what's Trenton look like to you?
So
not just what it looks like, but
right.
what do you see?
Well, Trenton is one of the last urban areas in the state of New Jersey that has not been redeveloped. And we're primed and we're ripe for redevelopment. The concern that I have is that we're not ready for that redevelopment. When I say we, I'm talking about the people that live here. The people that live here have to prepare themselves for it. So that's why the Vast Center, which is located here in the West Ward, A Better Way, which is located here in the West Ward, we have to do, not only myself, but we have to do a better job of connecting our men and women who live here in the West Ward and in the city of Trenton that needs training, because they need to be trained for these things that are going to occur in the city of Trenton, and that is that construction boom. I believe when I was here last time, I talked about having the entire city as a redevelopment zone. If you have the city as a redevelopment zone, every 7.5 miles of the city as a redevelopment zone, when the big developers come, you also can have smaller developers that are doing smaller, one or two houses on blocks. And so we need to have, two paths. We have to be preparing ourselves for it, because, we know when these opportunities happen. Just look down on East State Street. You have Ajax Construction. They purchased multiple properties in that area because they plan to redevelop the building. That building is going to need to be demoed on the inside. We need to have residents working on those buildings.
Do we have guarantee that we're going to have residents working on those buildings?
So the mayor can definitely do that. And the reason why I'm saying the mayor can do that, because when developers come into the city, they don't talk to the city council first. They talk to the administration. So all of that negotiation, what they want to do, what their plan is, it has to come from the mayor and from whomever is the Housing and Economic Development Director. And I can rest assure you, no member on council is going to say no. Now, what happens, and what has happened in the past on some projects, council has asked, are you going to have local participation? And the developer will stand there and tell you, yes. And then the project starts, and they may have one, because there was no percentage, there was no detail. But because they said yes, I'll have some, and they chose one. So the administration has to put that in the paperwork. Now, council can ask, but we're not a part of that negotiation.
Does council have to approve it?
Council would have to approve it, yes, and do that. But the hope is that whomever is elected mayor and whomever that economic development director is, because that's going to be a question I'm going to ask of that economic development director, because they have to be confirmed by the council.
Probably everybody is going to be new, all of the department heads will be new. What department head do you feel is the most critical behind the after the mayor?
Well, all of them are. All of them are critical, especially police and fire. For public safety, they're critical. But for the turnaround of this city, it's the economic development director. That person has to be, in my opinion, should be someone who has been in the business, has done urban planning, and has relationships with the state of New Jersey. Because you have to be a well-rounded person in that area, because not only are you talking about the redevelopment of the city, but you're talking about HUD funding. There's a number of other things, our vacant properties. I definitely am gonna ask also, how does that person feel about the city being an entire redevelopment zone? That way you don't have to have auctions. So if Trentonians live on a block and there's a house that's been on your block and it's been vacant, and if several members of that block want to pull their money together and say, we're going to take over this house and we're going to buy it from the city and we're going to redevelop it and we're going to put a family in it, now you don't have to go to an auction. The city can take your proposal and say yes, because you have a vested interest.
Now they can. How likely are they to do?
Well, as long as you have, so there are criteria, right? As long as you can show you have the resources and you go through the same process that if anyone else that comes to the city. You'll fill out the application, you'll show your bank information, where your finances coming from, what you plan to do, what is your plan. And so that's an opportunity to get city residents involved in turning their block around.
What are your priorities?
Well, my priority, once I'm elected, my priorities are getting back to the basics, and that's listening to the residents and moving in the direction that the residents want to move in, which I know is potholes, trash, abandoned properties, right? But then trying to figure out with residents, because trash, there's just some things that we have to agree that we're gonna do. So some of the things, in going back to the civic associations and having these conversations, it's, let's all put our trash out when we're supposed to put our trash out, and let's make sure that it's tied up in a can with a lid. And so those are things that we can work with our civic associations and our and our homeowners, and let's start there when it comes to the trash. When it comes to our crime issues in our communities, we have to get back to neighborhood watches. Now neighborhood watch is a little easier because we all have smartphones. So when something, again, it's connecting residents on a block. If there's something going on or you see something, it's text your neighbors and let your neighbors know. So now everyone on the block is aware, and those are real simple steps that we can do together.
Are you satisfied with the work that the police have done in the past 4 years?
In the past, well, it's difficult. Well, no, I'm not satisfied, but it's difficult for them. And I just got these numbers this morning. Back in the 80s, we had 400 police officers. Today we have 285. And so that's why I'm advocating to bring our police force back up to the levels that it used to be. And if we can get back to that level, then we would have more officers on the street, and we'll be able to actually do. I didn't know that the crime rate was higher back then.
20-30% higher.
But if it's lower now and we have more officers, a lot of the complaints that I hear is when residents call the police department, we don't have anybody that can respond. It's way different now. The police department don't even do accident reports. You come to the police department to have the report filled out. That's because of being short-staffed, that they do things differently.
Short-staffed or inefficiencies?
I call it short-staffed,
okay.
Because we don't have the number of officers that should be on the street.
What about, now I know the city, the council has no direct link to sort of education. But our children for too many years have been spinning, not going anywhere. And just recently the state released 5 or 6 schools from overview, and these schools are still doing producing 30% successes, 30% failures. I mean, and they're giving the okay. You think about it, what are you going to do about this? Somehow or another, it's got to
Right.
stop.
So at some point, I think a part of our issue here in Trenton is we have such a high turnover in superintendents. And we have to ask ourselves why. And since I have been on council, what I have seen, and I don't think we had this problem when Dr. Lytle was here, but after Dr. Lytle, every superintendent that came in when he or even she tried to implement something or tried to, it's always been a big ruckus. Like, you know, I don't think that we're sitting down and understanding what the challenges are in the district. I know I was there when the teachers union made a statement that they never got to go over the school budget with the district. And Mayor Jackson asked me to represent the city in that meeting when we went line item by line item through the budget. And we did that, and we looked at certain things. How can the teachers union, but it wasn't in their contract. So if we're ever gonna work together.
How could the teachers union what?
Well, that they were being asked to do a task. Mm-hmm. So that was at the time when the custodians were being cut. Mm-hmm. And so the rep from the custodian union asked if the teachers could put the chairs on top of the table at the end of the day. It wasn't in the teacher's contract. So, and I sat back, because this is my first time ever being in this arena with teachers unions, and I just sat back and I just said to myself, but why couldn't that, because you know that these guys are going to be cut. Now, if someone has to come in and put all of the chicks, I remember when I was in school, we did that at the end of the day to students. We put our chairs on top of the table. And so, but to hear that it's not in our contract, not, well, let us go back and talk to our members, it just wasn't in the contract. And so when we see that we have the issues that we have, if that's the answer, it's not in our contract, or it should be, or we have to, at some point, you know, the superintendent, the school board, and the mayor actually has more authority, because council has none, because he or she appoints the school board at this point. So we have to have school board members that, number one, understand the concerns of the district, and to be able to work with a superintendent.
What do you mean at this point?
Well, I mean, moving forward, because we're moving forward with a new mayor who will be making new appointments when those terms come up. Now, the mayor can elect to keep the person there, or he can put somebody else there. So what I'm saying is, at this point...
It sounded like you were saying, well, maybe in future he won't have that discretion.
Well, I mean, there's been
something else.
Right, there's been some talk about that too. There's been some talk about going back to an elected school board. That may happen too.
What are we going to do about getting these kids a thorough and efficient education? Somebody, I mean, that is required by the state of New Jersey. It's required. And we haven't been doing it for at least 40 years. We have got to break that cycle. I don't know how, but it has to be done. How are we going to do this?
Right. I think we have to sit down, and what I'm trying to do is understand the school district. So I meet with the superintendent quarterly to understand exactly what he's doing. And because he is the expert, right, I'm not. So I'm hearing from him, no, I'm not an expert in education.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that you're saying he's the expert. For 40 years, it seems like we haven't had any experts there.
But what I'm getting at is, if we as a community don't work with who is in the leadership, we're not going to always agree, right? We're not going to always agree. But I agree and I support bringing back paraprofessionals, because when they were laid off, we have all of these problems with our kids who needed those paraprofessionals, and those paraprofessionals lived here in the city. The superintendent is bringing them back. I don't know how many, but he's bringing them back. We had concerns. I got concerns from residents who kids go to school out of district and they weren't getting busing. So the superintendent informed me they're purchasing more buses. So we're hearing complaints, and the district is addressing the complaints, but then folks are still not happy. And so until we understand why the teachers' leadership, the district leadership is not meshing, then how can our kids learn? If the people who, it's just like with the council, if the council is constantly fighting with the mayor, then that means we're not paying attention to constituents.
Well, you got the council squared away, right?
What do you mean by squared away?
Well, procedures and processes.
Yes.
Okay, so maybe you can do something to get the school district squared away, get the administration and the unions meshing.
Right, and I think that's a role that council can play along with the mayor, because the mayor has the appointing powers of appointing the school board members. The school board members hire the superintendent. And so we have to have a roadmap of what we want to see happening in the district. What I'm saying is I'm not equipped because I don't have the background. I don't have the back. That's why I'm meeting with the superintendent and the school board president to understand. And I'm open to meeting with the teachers union. I just don't want to sit down and be badgered, and then to be able to share their concerns and needs with the superintendent. And I have tried to do that, but it's difficult when folks are screaming, because we were told, when I was sitting in that meeting, I was told the city needs to pay its fair share. The city needs to pay its fair share. Every year in the Jackson administration, the city has given an increase to the school district. But you haven't heard that. You keep hearing the negative. No one is acknowledging what the city is doing. And I think we have to get out of always bringing up what we don't agree about, and let's begin to look at the things that we are doing. Let's talk about some of the progression that we're making, and then say, okay, and we need to do this. But we're constantly talking about what we're not doing. And from what I've seen, and I've been in West Ward schools, we have excellent students. We have students doing well. But then we have a large majority of students that are still struggling. So the question is, as you say, how do we move that forward? But if the adults can't get along, that's going to affect the kids. And so I think it's more so, how do we get the district and the teachers and city government, how do we get us all on the same page, understanding the direction and knowing that we're not all going to get what we want. There has to be some compromise. And then let's acknowledge the things that we are doing so that we all understand. Because if I wasn't sitting down meeting with the superintendent or president, I wouldn't know that. But we got criticized for meeting. So you want to hold me accountable as a councilman, and I'm meeting, but then there's a problem with the councilman meeting with the superintendent and the school board president, and they're providing me with information. And then the information they provide me, I'm able to share with you and others. I mean, what is wrong with that? But if we're always operating in the negative becomes the narrative. And that's what everyone gets stuck on. And we have to change
I
that.
get stuck on 70-80% of our children not being proficient.
But you can't address that. It's difficult to address that if the folks who are supposed to be addressing that are constantly at each other, because...
Well, I'm hoping that you will address that and make that go away. That we can start addressing the proficiency of our children.
And I think by meeting with the superintendent, I'm starting to...
Do you do that alone, or do you do that with other council?
No, it's actually a group of men that sit down with them, and we have a quarterly breakfast. Perry Shaw, Ed Hill, Bill Watson.
I thought there was
No. This is community folks. And so we meet quarterly for breakfast on a Saturday. But we got criticized for doing that,
Is there anything you want to say to the folks that will be listening to this?
Well, I'm asking the residents of the West Ward to come out on June the 12th and vote for me for West Ward councilman. I'm getting back to the basics, and that is the communities. Back to community meetings, back to listening to the residents and their concerns, and dealing with their issues, one issue, one community at a time, as I've done in the past, We'll ask those directors to come to these meetings and address the residents, because I know, as everyone else knows, not every resident can come to a 5:30 council meeting. I understand that. And my goal is to bring those directors to you so that they can answer your questions and you can understand, when things are going to get done in your community. But I also want to partner with those residents to get some things done in their community that we can do, that we can get done. And so I'm asking them to vote for me on June the 12th. Polls are open from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. And also, as a footnote, we do have a primary election on June 5th.
Thank you, Zachary Chester, incumbent candidate for Trenton's West Ward Council seat. I like that you're getting back to the basics. Good luck.